I have 10. Let's start.
We got 6. Okay. Yeah, start.
Okay. So as people come in, we'll admit them. So this is recording. So for those of you watching the recording, which judging by our attendance should be a lot of you, this is the How to Find a Not Boring Image workshop led by the lovely layout staff of SBYIR. Okay. Well, first, if the layout staff just want to introduce themselves, we can quickly do that. So I'm Kamal, I'm the layout chief. I've been with SBYIR since spring 2020, so my freshman year, and I really enjoy SBYIR. All right, who wants to go next?
I'll go next. I'm Isra. I'm a junior. I've been part of SBYIR layout team since fall 2020. It's been fun. I just like drawing, so I thought I would apply it somewhere, and I apply it here. So yeah, next.
I'm Fanny. I also joined fall 2020, and I'm a layout editor. Yeah.
I'm Annie, and I also joined this year, so the beginning of this month, and I'm one of the graphic editors.
I'm B. I'm new, and I'm a layout editor.
Hi, I'm Maple. I'm new as well, joined this year, and I'm a graphic editor.
Hi, I'm Ujala. I joined last year, fall 2020, and I'm a graphic editor.
Hi, I'm Judy. I joined this semester as a layout editor.
Wonderful, amazing. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and let's jump right into it. Okay, so like we said, thank you for whoever added my name, but you spelled it wrong. It should be an A, but that is okay. You can see my name on the little tag.
That was me, my bad.
It's okay, Fanny. I still love you. Okay, anyways. So welcome to the workshop, How to Find Not Boring Images for SBYIR. So although this is kind of centered towards SBYIR, it's applicable in a lot of different things. So if you ever work for a scientific journal of any kind, or even if you're doing research and you need to present it anywhere, or even for like a school project or something, finding images is really key to conveying your message well, and I'll show you why. So first of all, why do we need images? Why are they so important? So I'll start off by asking you guys, which page do you want to read more, the left or the right?
Right.
You can either say it out loud or type in the chat.
All right, so we have right. Someone said, Travis said left, right. Travis said catchier title.
I think he's saying that the left has a catchier title. Yeah. So.
Okay, interesting. Thank you for your feedback, everyone. So personally, I would say, and most people agree, I would want to read the right page more just because it's more engaging. There's variations in like font width or weight is the technical term. The images are nice to look at. And I don't know, it just seems more inviting, right? Like the page on the left just seems very boring and kind of very textbooky. And it doesn't seem like, personally, I wouldn't want to read that. It just seems overwhelming just to look at all that text. So images help engage the audience. So images are a way to capture the audience's attention before they even read a single word. So they help you communicate faster for this reason, because they're the first things that draw readers' attention. No matter how beautiful your writing is, no matter how catchy your title is, like for this article, this might be a better article overall, the one on the left, but I might not be inclined to read it, or I might never know it's the best article ever written about this topic because I won't even want to start reading it. So the images or any graphics that you have your graphic editors make, they will just help people to engage better and to be more willing to read your article or read your research or whatever project that you're working on. And it's a nice way to leave a strong impression without doing too much in terms of a catchy title or anything. So that is why images are useful. All right. Also, if at any point you have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat. We will have a portion at the end to ask questions, but if you have anything in between, feel free to type them in the chat. All right, moving on. So we're gonna play a little game. It's called Effective or Ineffective. And so basically how it works is we'll show you an image, and if you think it's effective for the topic given, you'll write in the chat that it's effective. If you think it's ineffective, then write ineffective. Pretty self-explanatory. So let's get started. So keep in mind that the topic of this image that I'm about to show you is memory manipulation. So would you say this is an effective image or an ineffective image?
And if you want, you can explain like why you think it's effective or ineffective.
Yes.
You can also write it in the chat if you're uncomfortable saying it out loud.
Yeah, you can just type it in the chat, or you don't have to give an explanation if you don't want to. You can just say like one word.
All right, we have ineffective-ish, too busy, ineffective, kind of textbooky, ineffective because I feel that it doesn't match the topic, and we got another ineffective. I can't tell if it's gonna be about memory, like the image.
Valid.
All right, Isra, go ahead if you want to
Okay,
explain.
yeah, so if you want to just click next. Yeah, so I honestly wasn't even thinking about like the topic itself, but I do mention like what is the purpose of the image. So some cons that I noted were like things that were labeled in the image were not mentioned in the article. Obviously you guys don't have access to the article on this slide, but when I like Control F for the things that are labeled on the image itself, there was a lot, like the only two words that were mentioned by name were amygdala and hippocampus. So it's too busy, like one of the other people mentioned. And there's a question about whether or not this image actually serves a purpose. Like Natalie says, you can't even tell it's about memory. I honestly, when I looked for maybe more effective images, I wasn't even thinking about the overall memory topic. I ended up just focusing on like, what were they trying to portray in this image and how could I find an image that portrays it better? But yeah, something we're noting about these kind of images where you're maybe just trying to show the location of something in something like the human brain, it can be very difficult to find something that has to the exact information that you want to portray. Like here we see too much going on. There's too many things being labeled that weren't even addressed in the article. And that's hard to avoid. So something that I do want to address that we'll be talking about later is that if you run into an issue, a situation where there's too much going on that could potentially be edited out, the layout team could, oh, Coleman, you want to mute yourself real quick? I think. Oh, someone needs to mute themselves. Okay, sorry, thank you. Okay, but yeah, you could maybe ask the layout team, like write a little note suggestion for the layout team that like, hey, these are things that I don't mention in my article. You could, if it's possible, Photoshop them or edit them out. But yeah, in general, there's too much going on. And I think in general, it's pretty flat. You could have a more interesting photo. And then there's an issue of like, what's the purpose? Are you just trying to show where the things are? Okay, so next, can you hit next? Twice, actually. Okay, yeah. So this is an image that I found. Again, it basically serves the same purpose. I was not thinking about the fact that you can't even tell it's about memory. But yeah, so here, instead of just showing where things are, it also shows the purpose of what things do. Again, this has too much going on where it talks about the hypothalamus, basal ganglia, and thalamus. But again, you could maybe ask the layout team to edit that out if that's an issue. But here it also shows the purpose of the amygdala and the hippocampus. And I guess if you see the trend of, they both mentioned memory, maybe people who see the image can then actually understand what the topic's going to be about. I do agree that it's still kind of textbooky, but I guess this sort of brings into the question. I think these are like 3 questions to ask yourself that I wrote on the side. Is there too much going on? Are there things you want edited out that maybe the layout team can go in and edit out? Or there may be other images that don't have as much going on. Second, what is the purpose of the image with respect to enhancing someone's understanding of your piece? I mean, for one thing, it could just be something aesthetic that lures people in, like, oh, this just looks really cool and people will like stop to read my article. Or it could be something that actually clarifies something that was confusing in your article. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking for images for your article. And then, are there images that do a better job of portraying that purpose aesthetically? Like between this one and the photo before, I feel like this is less flat. It has more gradations, like there's more shading and it pops out a little more. If you hit next, Como, there's this image as well. Something worth noting is that, like I mentioned before, the only 2 words mentioned in the article were amygdala and hippocampus. This one doesn't even have the amygdala. So I'm not saying that this is an image that I would have chosen, but just like in general, it's more aesthetically appealing. And I feel like it's a style that people mostly try to avoid in research journals just because of what they have in mind when they think of a research journal. They think it's like really formal, textbooky, but this is just an example of how things can be really stylized and still appear in a research journal. And it's something that we actually sort of encourage. So yeah, if you find an image like sort of more stylized than you would expect, that's actually sort of encouraged. But yeah, these are 3 questions to ask yourself going forward. I think we're done with this example.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Isra. So a lot of great points. Don't be afraid to find like a fun image. Just because we're a science journal, that doesn't mean it has to be boring, hence the title of the workshop. And yeah, there's a certain eye you have to like look for what is like an aesthetically appealing image, but just something that you feel nice looking at. Think about a good rule of thumb is, would you see it in National Geographic? If you would, or like a big name magazine, then that's a great image. All right, moving on. Okay. Keep in mind that the topic of this next image that you're about to see is the role of sleep in Drosophila. All right. Would you say this is effective or ineffective?
All right, we have ineffective, Travis said sensory overload, ineffective, too much going on, ineffective, I don't know where to look first. Yeah, so you guys are all correct. In my opinion, this is pretty ineffective because, like Travis said, it's sensory overload. Like there's too much going on. Like you don't know where to look. There's like a lot of images in one. It's really confusing. Too busy. Too many words. And when someone looks at this, you're not gonna understand what's going on, because I feel like when you look at it, you can't really even understand what the topic is. So yeah, you can just click next. So this is also another image that the writer included. Do you guys think it's effective or ineffective?
Yeah, maybe just compare it to the other one. Yeah.
Ineffective looks like a meme template.
That's true. I didn't notice that.
Looks more effective than the previous image. Compared to the other, I would say effective. Okay. All right. So I guess you could say compared to the other one, it is less ineffective than the other one, but I would still say it's not effective because like first off, like I don't know what the bottom part like did it come out from like a textbook? Like I don't know what that is, but if something like this is in your photo, like Isra mentioned, you can always ask or request an edit that could be done to like cut that part out or crop it out. Yeah. Yeah, someone did actually submit this. I'm not gonna name names. Yeah, Ujala also said colors are flat.
It's hard to
I
find images.
agree.
I don't want to drag their
I
name in the mud.
agree.
Okay, but like
Honestly, this
Yeah.
was
No, we're
a
dragging.
pretty hard. Yeah, this was a hard topic to find images for. Like I also tried finding images, and the best ones I came up with weren't even that good. So in this case, if you cannot find any good images, we'll talk more about this later on, but like this would have to entail like making graphics, requesting a graphic. So we can talk more about that later on.
Yes, thank you, Penny. Also, I do want to point out that this image, like Penny said, although it seems more effective than the previous one, it's also really poor quality. Like you can see the pixels in this image. So we want to try to avoid that. We want to have good, crisp, clean images in the journal. And you know, it just looks better when you're presenting research or you're presenting anything formally to have clean and high quality images. Because if you have something that's really pixelated, it just doesn't look as professional. All right, so moving on. All right, would you guys say this is effective or ineffective? And I think we may have forgotten to put the title here.
The topic there for that one is using silica beads to preserve Arctic ice. It's in the transition. Oops.
Oh, my bad. All right, let's
Yeah.
pretend you didn't see that. Would you say this is effective or ineffective?
Travis says that it's ineffective because he couldn't tell if it was salt or sand.
It's neither.
It's neither. Spoiler. Looks more like someone prepping some pizza dough. Natalie said it could be effective because it catches my attention. If there was some text or labeling around it, it would be more effective. Valid. That's valid.
The topic is using silica beads in order to preserve Arctic ice. So that image there is supposed to be of silica beads.
And also keep in mind that these images do have captions. So even if you can't tell exactly what it is, it will have a caption. So
And
yeah.
likely the title of the article will be somewhere nearby. So
yeah, so you'll know what it's in reference to.
yeah, like Kevin said, it'll be effective with context, so they will have some context.
Yes.
I didn't know what silica beads looked like outside of the factive, so ineffective. Natalie also takes it back. She thinks it's ineffective.
Interesting.
I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, Somya. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, but she or they said, I'm not sure. It does look artistic. I agree. It does look aesthetic.
All right, Ujala, you want to give them the answer?
Yeah, so do you mind clicking it?
Yes.
So for this one, we did mark it as an effective image. Because the thing is, as Travis mentioned, he didn't know what silica beads did look like before. And the thing is, that's not necessarily like a bad thing, because in a scientific article, there are going to be things that you haven't encountered before. And that's why it is important to have graphics and images so that you can expose readers to the topic at hand, because otherwise, like, who would really even know what you were talking about when you're talking about silica beads without an image? So one of the reasons this is effective is because it illustrates a point, which is really important to increasing like reader comprehension and making science more accessible. And also the graphics that we had shown before were all like charts and I guess graphics, and this is an image. So we did also want to show that you can submit multiple types of images as well. It can be like a realistic photo such as this, or it can be like a graphic or a chart. So you can submit like a variety of things. You don't have to feel like boxed in by feeling like you have to submit a certain type of image. And it does grab your attention as soon as you look at it because there are a lot of details, but it's not as distracting as some of the other graphics that we had seen before. So while it may not be like the first thing you think of, we do think it is an effective image because it's clear, it's detailed, and it helps convey a point.
It is worth noting that Ujala didn't end up putting the image in the article. She only made she made graphics for the article, so it ended up being a situation where she, since she designed things for the article, it was more suitable and appropriate. But yeah, I just thought that was worth.
Yeah, just because we don't use your images doesn't mean that they're bad.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of great points, Ujala. Yeah, so like this is a really beautiful image, I think. And it just looks nice, and it's like a lot of what Ujala said, it attracts your attention right away. And it doesn't have to be like a diagram. Like, don't feel like your images all have to be like diagrams. They can look like this, or just be like fun images, just realistic images. Like, that is totally okay, and that is very effective. All right, so moving on, let's go to the last one. All right. Would you say this is an effective image or an ineffective image, considering the topic is heterozygous genes and resistance to malaria?
Travis says ineffective because nothing says malaria about that. It's just a map with colors.
That is right. Anybody else?
Ugly colors, Ujala adds. Kevin says ineffective, poor color choice, complicated legend. Natalie says this is effective for a genomic study or lit review, but not for a magazine article. Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah, so if there's no more comments coming, then I'll reveal the answer. Oh, I think there's one more comment.
Says ineffective because it looks confusing.
Yes, a lot of great points made. Excellent points have been made. So the color scheme isn't ideal, which is a nice way of saying it's very ugly looking. The color scheme is not great. However, this is something that can be fixed. So this isn't like the biggest stressor, and we'll get into that later of how this can be fixed. But other than that, it doesn't have a title, so I don't know what this is about. And even if I have the article as a context, it's still not ideal. Like, you should really have a title with any sort of graph that you have of this kind, just because like the legend here, like this key right here, it doesn't really give too much information. Like, it's very much like it's very scientific jargon, and not everybody will be able to understand that. So it needs to be somewhat relatable to somebody who has no idea what your topic is, or has never read about it, or has no scientific knowledge. So you need to be able to communicate it to them, which is also something that the editorial staff stresses, to not include too much scientific jargon in your pieces. So the same thing applies for your images or any graphics that you submit, that it should be something that someone who has no idea about the topic or even about any sort of scientific field can understand. So that's that. Also, it's very unattractive. It just doesn't look nice. I don't particularly like the font. I don't like the way it's like laid out, but that's just me personally. Again, like, what we say is not like gospel. Like, you can disagree with us, but just like from the experience that we've had over the past few semesters and beyond for some of us, it's just, not something that we would include in the article or willingly. Like, sometimes like we have to include these things if there's no images that you can find. Like, for example, this is very niche. Like, this is a very specific study that the writer mentioned in their article. and this is the only graph that was available for this particular thing. So there weren't any other options that we had, so we had to include this. We had no other choice. So if you can't find any good images, more on this later. All right, so how to find an image. So just to give a, hi Jala, just to give a brief, bye. So just to give a brief like rundown of how to find an image. We'll go through the steps on what you can use and the main things to keep in mind. The two main things you need to keep in mind are the usage rights and the size. So like we said before, it needs to be a high resolution image, and it also needs to be creatively licensed. So in the public domain. That means that if we use that image and somebody who owns that image sees it, they won't copyright us or they won't send us a fine. Because this is like plagiarism. If you use somebody else's article or not article, image or graphic or diagram, and it's not in the public domain, then that is like plagiarism. So we want to avoid that, and we'll get into how to do that later. But just aesthetically speaking, things to keep in mind. Your image should either convey the topic that you're trying to show. So like everything we talked about in the previous few slides, it should either convey the topic, it should be aesthetically appealing. Just because, you know, at the end of the day, an image is to look pretty, you know, quote unquote, but it's more than that. It's not just there to look pretty. It's to convey something. It's to engage the audience and to gain their attention and to make them read your piece. So, so just, you know, keep these things in mind as you're looking for images, and we'll show you the precise steps on how to find them. All right. I think Annie was doing this one, but I believe she had to leave. So I can quickly go through this. So the first thing I want to think about is keywords. So these can be the topic you're writing about in general, or you can go more specific. So in terms of keywords, like let's say if you're doing something about climate change or the greenhouse effect or something, there's so many different keywords you can use to find images about that. They could be related to stuff that you mentioned in your article, or they could just be kind of general images that have to something to do with your article that you think look nice, that are relevant. So think about those keywords. And if you need any help kind of picking keywords, reach out to your layout editor or your graphic editor once you are in contact with them, and they can help you out with that. Also, make sure to set filters when you're searching for things on Google. We'll get into this like specifically later. We'll have screenshots. But just again, to reiterate, the filter should be set to Creative Commons. That's the Creative Commons licensing that allows us to publish these images, and set the image size to large. Also, so once you've done this, once you've thought about the keywords and you set the filters, then that's when you search for your image. And that's when you look for how visually interesting they are and whether they convey what you want. Is it too boring? Is it too interesting? Is it too overwhelming? You know, all the things that we talked about. All right, so take it away, whoever is doing this slide.
Yeah, so now I think we're just going to kind of get into the logistics of what Kamal's talking about in terms of actually getting into the process of finding good images. So as she mentioned, the first step is your keywords, just like any Google search. And I think just to kind of like reiterate, we're going to be using words that are relevant to your pieces. And I think something that might be helpful too would even be like not maybe using like scientific words, because that might kind of lead to more textbooky type images. And so this is the Google Advanced Search. It's like, I don't know if you've ever done this before, but there's like a regular Google search where you just type in the words, but you can actually like go into the settings of the Google search and filter out specifically what you need. So this is kind of just showing you how to get there. So you can kind of just go here. And then I think on the next slide, it kind of highlights. Yeah, so I think Isra's gonna explain this one.
Yep. So like B was talking about and Kamal was talking about, the keywords would go on the top. You could list a bunch of words that you maybe exactly want portrayed, or if you want like several like general terms that, oh, any of these would work. Like there are different categories. I feel like they're more self-explanatory. Towards the bottom, you'll see we labeled image specifications, image size. You want large. There will be a drop-down menu. You want large or extra large, just because, as we mentioned before, high resolution is important. And then the most, I think, important thing besides image resolution is usage rights. You want Creative Commons licenses. So you click the drop-down menu and then you make sure that that is selected. Yeah, and then you would just hit advanced search after putting in all your keywords. Kamal, if you could go to the next slide. There's a more, oh, where's that image? Can you hit? Yeah, okay. There's a more straightforward method that I usually use. You could just like do a quick Google search on Google Images, and then after you do that, make sure you hit tools, which will be under that magnifying glass you see, and these like menu options will pop up. It's basically the same thing. The size will be there. There's large, and then there's usage rights, Creative Commons license. Which, regardless of which search engine you end up using, I think they all have something very similar in terms of how you get there. So yeah, that's just the general way of getting there. Make sure you always do this. I'm not sure if like a new search, or if you like look up a different term, if those filters are still applied. So ensure that those are always there if you look up a new term, if that makes sense. If there are any questions, feel free to ask, but if not, you can keep going.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so there's two methods to do this. This one I feel is a bit more straightforward, like Isra said. And let's move on. So we're gonna do a little example just to kind of show you guys in real time how this works, just because it can seem a little confusing and overwhelming if we just say it like this. So let's do a quick example. Oh, okay, let's end this. Okay, can somebody give me a topic to look up? Anything at all?
Yeah,
Preferably something. Yeah, preferably something that you're not doing this semester.
Yeah, because we're gonna have you guys look up your own topics later. So just think of something new.
So something random, anything.
I mean, I said bees.
Bees. Okay,
good.
lovely. All right, let's look for bees. Okay, we're gonna go to images. And here you go to tools. So right here, tools, and then you go to usage rights. You set this to Creative Commons and you set the size to large. So we want large images that are Creative Commons licensed. All right. So yeah, I'd say just looking at these, this is a pretty cute image. I like this. It's high quality. It looks nice. It's just one bee there, depending on what you need it for. It looks nice. I like this. I probably wouldn't go for something like this because it just seems a little too busy. Not to say that there's too many bees there. It's just the photo itself, it's very like bright in some spots. It's like overexposed and yeah, that's a technical term. And it's just, it doesn't have a very nice look to it. Like this looks better. This also has a bunch of bees, but it just looks nicer. There's just a better composition to this and it's not overexposed. The colors look nice, but we can fix the colors. So more on that later. Also, let's say, for example, if your topic is PTSD, for example, or any sort of mental illness, something you can do is go to someone like Van Gogh, because he very famously suffered from mental illness and a lot of his paintings have to do with that topic. So, you know, once we do that, we can look up just Van Gogh. Has nothing to do with PTSD, seemingly, that keyword, but you know, if you know the backstory, it is very relevant. So usage rights, Creative Commons, size large, And then you can find something like this. Like, I feel like this is kind of a very nice looking image. And it's kind of very symbolic in terms of the topic of mental illness. Like these two people, they seem kind of down, melancholy, and he also uses a lot of blue in his paintings to show this. So yeah, also, don't be afraid to look at historic images, because if any paintings or any piece of art is older than 75 years, it's automatically in the public domain. So like, for example, Picasso's paintings, they just recently came into the public domain. They just recently were past that 75-year mark. So, so feel free to use those. Also, the Met Museum in the city, they have released a bunch of their art, like publicly, like images of that. So that's also fair game. You can use that.
Yeah, for the Met
So-
thing, there's like specific, you want to look up open access. You'll probably have to Google your own thing about how to get copyright-free images on their, like, I forget what they call it, but their collection. But yeah, that's like technicality. Anyway, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, you're good. So yeah, don't feel free to like look at images like this. Like if you're doing something that has to do with agriculture, like there was, I know one writer last year who was doing an article about agriculture. There are countless and countless paintings of fields and farms. So that would be perfect for this. Even something like this would be a great choice. So don't feel afraid to use historic paintings or drawings, because they obviously look nice because they've stood the test of time. And more often than not, they're in the public domain. So that is a very easy thing to do when looking for images. All right, going back, does anybody have any questions about this process? Anything at all? Before I move on. No? Okay, I do also want to mention, because I know this was a question last year, if you have it again, once you set these filters, only the images that show up here in the initial Google search are valid. Like, let's say if I open this and I went down here, there's more like options, but these are not like necessarily of the same filters. Like these are not necessarily large and creatively licensed. They're just images like that Google thinks are related to this, and they just give you suggestions for them. So only focus on the images that initially show up in your initial search with the filters. Okay, moving on. Okay, I forget who's doing this.
Was it John supposed to? We are
I'm
kind
not
of
sure,
behind.
but you wanna go for it, Isra?
Sure. I mean, I've mostly just gone to Google or the Met whenever I have to find photos for like presentations and everything. But these are other websites that apparently people have used. So there's Wikimedia Commons. I've actually seen some of the writers source that. I've seen a couple of really good photos from there. Smart Severe. I don't know what you want me to get from this slide, but these are links that you can use. I could read it off, I guess. Science Image, Public Health Image Library. The only ones I'm familiar with are Wikimedia Commons, the Met Collection, and Google Images, but these are other options.
Yeah, so there are a few more websites that if you want, I can share in our Discord. And once we share this with everybody, this presentation, because it will be shared with everybody, we can also give you more options. We just included like a few just so that the page isn't overwhelmed. But you can also just reach out to us if you feel like you're not finding what you want on Google. You can look at other websites that have like free images, good images to use. So they're fair game. All right, moving on. So all this to say, when do you request a graphic? Okay, so the point where you can request a graphic, and this is specifically for the SBYIR writers, if you have no existing images that clarify the most confusing or important parts of your article, if you can't find anything that's good, that's aesthetically appealing, that conveys what you want it to convey, that looks nice, like, you know, Google's slacking and there's no strong relevant images, or your topic is very, very niche, like something like this. Like this topic was about like an insulin pump with a hybrid closed loop technology. Like this is a very niche topic. The one we had in the beginning about the heterozygous genes and malaria, that's also a very niche topic. So something like this, if you can't find good images and you've asked for help from other people in your layout editors and nobody can find good images, that is a point where you will request a graphic. So this graphic over here is actually the first graphic that we ever made for SBYIR. And it is like, it's similar in theory to like this diagram here, but it just looks nicer. It's more aesthetically appealing. It has a nicer color scheme. It makes you want to look at it. It's also not too busy. Like I feel like this is very busy. And for this particular topic that we had, we couldn't find any good images. Like there were no diagrams that were like this, that were good quality and that conveyed what we wanted them to convey. So that's why we made a graphic. So this is a point where you can reach out to the layout staff. I believe we'll have a form, and then you can request a graphic through that. And then we'll have someone create a graphic for you, like something like for that map that we had earlier, if you remember. That's a very easy thing to do, to create a graphic for. And yeah, so there are other options, but do like look for images first, because you know, a lot of times if you don't find images in the first keyword search, there's other keywords you can use to find better images. So exhaust those options first and then come to us. All right, moving on. So how to save an image. This is very important because if you find a good image, you want to know how to save it to preserve its high quality. All right, so whoever's doing this.
In order to save an image, let's say you already found the photos from Google, for example, the B one that we saw. We just right click on the image, and normally we suggest doing open image in new tab. That usually gives you like a bigger image. And once that tab opens, you can right click and click save as image and name the file whatever you think is appropriate for it, and then press enter and it'll save to your computer. Or if you are finding your image on a different website, you can also just right click on the image and save as from there.
Yeah, so it seems pretty self-explanatory, but we're just conveying it to make sure you know. Make sure for both of these options, you go to the website the image is located at. So I can very quickly show you, just because I think it's easier if I show you. Okay.
We do have 7 minutes left. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's do that. All right. So like this, I would go to the link that this image is at. Don't save it directly from here, because a lot of times if you save it directly from Google, it makes the image smaller. All right. So go here and save image from here. All right. How to format captions. So this is also very important because we need captions to give context. All right.
Was I doing this? Because I'll do it, whatever. Okay, so the caption format. All right, so you want the figure, if you have multiple figures, that's what the number is for. So whatever number figure, like the organization you want it on, like, oh, you want this figure to appear first, you would give its corresponding number. You're not gonna have any like colons, dash, periods between the figure number and the caption itself. I know that's something that people usually do, but that's not something we do. Okay, and then the figure number, that part of it is bolded. So it's relatively straightforward, just bold, and then write the caption right after. The caption obviously does have punctuation. Okay, and then when it comes to citing the image, which will go at the end of your article, you're gonna either attach the URL to your image. I think when you initially upload your image, it goes in your drive, and there's a corresponding doc that has the URL. And if it was a graphic that one of the layout members made, it would be image courtesy of our name and then graduation year. But that's like not something you guys have to worry about. Just make sure you collect your URLs as shown in the example on the right. Yeah, okay, that's pretty much it.
Okay, great. So we were gonna do breakout rooms here, but since there's not too many people, we'll just do it all in one. So the activity that we had was for you to now take into consideration everything that we just said. And for any writers for SBYIR, look for images that relate to your piece this semester. And once you find one good image, send the URL in the chat right here so that we can open it and look at it and everybody can kind of observe. And if anybody else is here who's not a writer, you can look for a cover image for SBYIR. So the theme this year is the science of well-being. And we always like to have like a very crisp, clean cover image for our journals that conveys the topic. So if you want to, judging by that theme, if you want to look for a cover image, go for it. So we'll take about like 5 minutes and you guys can just look for images, and as you find them, put them in the chat. So since we started a little late, this will go a bit like 10 minutes over, so I hope that's okay with everybody. So yeah, so let's just, yeah, go ahead.
For those who need to leave early, I think just do a quick search so that you can get, I have to, Ishmael has to leave. So yeah, I understand if you have to leave, even though we started early, you guys did not, commit to that. So if you have to leave, you have to leave. But I think it's a good opportunity for you to get immediate critiques now so that it's easier on you later in terms of finding the images. And then, that way we don't have to like tackle you if you didn't find a good image later. Not that we will, but
yeah. And we will have a recording of this like on our YouTube. So you can always look back at that, but this is kind of in real time, you can get feedback. So if you want to just hang around for like maybe until like 6:10, then we should be done by then. And we'll also show you where to save. So this is the most important part. So also for those of you watching the recording later on, make sure you watch the how to submit the images, because that's very important. That's probably the most important part of this whole presentation. So do stick around if you can. If you have to leave, obviously go for it. Do what you need to do.
Should we just skip to the how to save right now? I don't know. That's like.
Is anybody sending stuff in the chat?
Travis sent 2. Yeah.
Okay, let's look for that. Okay, let me stop share for a hot minute.
Here's 2 I like. Travis, what was your topic? Just for reference. Overcoming isolation through natural experiences, I think.
That's a mood. Okay. All right. So I opened your images. So let me share my screen again and let me show you guys. So this is the first one that he gave, and this is the second one. So we'll focus on this one first. I guess I'll start off, and if anybody else wants to jump in, feel free. I really like this image. I think it's very beautiful. I think it's very nice. It definitely conveys the topic. I feel like isolation in nature. Like, it's very self-explanatory. It's nice. I don't really have too much else to say about this. I feel like it's a bit low quality, but that just might be like because it looks smaller here. So if this is like a high-res image, then I'd say it's good to go.
Yeah, I agree. Since he is sitting alone, you can definitely tell that they're experiencing the nature that's around them. They're sitting in place. So I feel like, in comparison to the other one where they're sort of walking around, maybe not, I don't know, whatever. I feel like this is a better example of them engaging with their environment by actually like looking at it. Kind of want to push the guy into the water, actually. Okay, Travis. Okay. Number 1 kind of sucks. Okay, let's look at number 2 then.
Anyways, the second one. Okay, I actually like this one better in terms of like just the way it looks. I feel like there's just too much green here, even though it looks more high res than the other one. So that's good. It also conveys the topic equally well, I think, like loneliness in the wilderness. I think that's great. But for me personally, I just feel like there's a bit too much green, but it's still a really nice image.
I feel just in general, uploading more images on your, it ain't easy being green. That's true. Kevin says the contrast between the colors is nice. White isolated in a field of green. Yeah, I do agree with that. I feel like what you can do is upload several examples on your drive, on your folder, in the, like having more examples for your layout, whatever whoever's in charge of layout in your group is definitely better than having few. So if you're ever questioning like, oh, I'm not sure about this or that, you can leave comments in the doc that you have the URLs on, and then we can definitely take those into consideration when we choose which one we feel is more suitable for your article.
Yeah, and we'll also get into that document and those comments later. But yeah, it's better to leave more than less. So shoot for at least 3 images in your folder. And that's like a good starting point. So 3 or more images, I would say, is a good starting point. If we need more, we'll take more. We probably won't use any more than 3 per article, but you know,
Just
it's
in
better
terms
to
of
have
having
more.
options. Yeah.
Yes, so having more is just giving us more options, because sometimes, you know, if we're making a layout, we need like a picture that's in portrait mode rather than landscape. So just stuff like that, like, so it's better to have more options than to then be scrambling to find an image later that's like better for the article. All right, I don't know if anybody else had any. I think it was just you, Travis. So 10 out of 10 for sending images. Is there anybody else who wants immediate feedback if you just want to quickly look for an image?
Always happy to contribute. Yeah, thank you, Travis.
Thank you.
So, yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
next one.
Okay,
Also,
the
if I'm
topic
pronouncing
is,
your name wrong, feel free to say so. Go on.
yes, I'm sorry if we pronounced your name wrong. All right. Thank you. So the topic is green tea may promote well-being. So let me just open that up and I'll show you guys. Okay. So this is the image. I think it's very pretty. I like it. I enjoy
Definitely
it.
high res.
Yes. It has a nice color scheme. I'm a big fan of earth tones, but that's just me.
You can definitely tell what the topic is.
Yeah, it's definitely like you see the green tea, you see like the green tea powder, like, and with a caption, it'll be like, you'll obviously know what it is. Like, yeah, I feel like I like it. You guys are doing good. I feel like I don't have too much to say about these. So yeah, if anybody else has anything to add, feel free. If not, we can move on.
I mean, this has the earth tones, as you mentioned, so it does allow for the layout or graphic editor to take into account like a color scheme, which is always nice. In general, I feel like even the composition of the image is also nice, so you clearly took aesthetics into account, and we appreciate that. So yeah, anyone else? If not, go on. Okay.
Just every time I see Travis's like profile picture, I just laugh.
For
nice.
reference, for those who are watching the recording, it is Jack Black.
Oh yes, it is. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a
Bowser.
very grisly looking image of Jack Black. Okay, if there's nobody else who wants to send URLs, I guess that's fine. So we can move on. So let's get into it. Let me share my screen again. Okay. All right. So most important thing, how do you submit the dang images? All right, let's get into it. Go ahead, whoever's doing this.
So how to submit images. First, make sure you save the website so you can reference it later on. And then you want to cite the image using either the URL from which you found it online, or if the image was taken or is attributed to a graphic editor, cite their name and their graduation date. Then you want to write a caption, just short, concise one describing the image. No need for multiple sentences. It's mostly the image that will do that. And as Isra previously said, upload the documents and the separate document, or upload the images and a separate document with the citations and caption in your Google Drive folder. The path is shown below on the slide. And remember to include any requests you may have for the layout editors, such as if you want a separate or a certain part of the image edited, we can do that.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. Sometimes my computer does wacky things. Okay, Let me just go back. So yeah, exactly what we said here. You know, make sure that you save the website, you cite it, you have caption, and this is the link for the Google Drive folders. Also, it'll be in your writer folder. So we'll show you an example of a perfect notes or edits page. So this is courtesy of Jonathan, who was a writer last semester. I think he's an editor now. So shout out to him. He did an amazing job with both finding his images and all of his citations and captions and everything. So this is what it looks like. He gave us great notes. He says if this is the main photo, this could be organized in the layout as the headline photo. Like, that's great. Like, the more notes, the better. You know, he has perfect captions. He formatted everything great. The image like just looks gorgeous. It looks beautiful.
It's worth noting he didn't format the caption completely correctly, but that's obviously something we can fix on our end. That's like a very small detail, obviously.
Oh yeah, I think this should not be italicized.
Yeah, and then there shouldn't be a period after the number, and the figure number should be folded. But
yeah,
that's like something we have to focus on more anyway. It's worth appreciating the notes that he left, and then
yeah, okay, my bad. He didn't have it completely perfect, but the shoot to have the captions perfect, because that is just as much as your responsibility as it is ours. So so have that. But in terms of notes, he did a great job with the notes. So you know, my bad on that one. But for this one, like, he again submitted a great image, and then he said if this image could be more clarity or contrast, that's great. So although this is like a really high-res image and it portrays what he was trying to portray, it's really dull and it's really low contrast. So this is like a very easy fix. Like, you just open it in Photoshop and we can increase the saturation and the contrast. So that is something that we can do. We can change colors, we can change the brightness or the saturation or stuff like that. So if you leave like little, basically like anything, if you guys are familiar with like posting on like Instagram, for example, or even like the Photos app on your phone, like any edit that you're able to make, like when you like hit the little edit button, like brightness, contrast, saturation, vibrance, like we can do all of those pretty easily. So if you want to give little notes for that, feel free. Like that's great to do that. So yeah, anything else, like if you want something edited out or stuff like that, then you know, that's a bit more work, but that can still be done if you give us enough time, if you say it ahead of time.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, it would be more of a suggestion than a demand. Like, there's no like promise that we can actually do what you ask for some of the things that you may want edited out. But having those suggestions does help in terms of like, oh, you know, these are things that might not necessarily be relevant to the article. So keep that in mind. Travis did ask, wait, you're telling me I could have been telling Layout what to do this whole time? Can't believe it.
No, that's not what we're saying.
So yeah, like I mentioned, it's a suggestion.
Yeah. We will try our very best to take into account everything that you say, but you know, sometimes we can't do things like I remember last fall there was a writer who basically wanted one of our graphic editors to change her entire graphic like a week before it was due. Like, that is not something that we can accommodate. Like, that's just simply not enough time. And you know, once a graphic has been made, like with and we will always ask you before making a graphic, like what you think of it, or like what any suggestions you have or any reference pictures you want to give. So once that's done, it's very hard to like completely change it. Like if you want to change a color or if something's scientifically inaccurate and you want to comment on that, that's perfectly fine. Like simple fixes is fine, but you know, changing the whole thing or like something major, like that's not ideal.
Yeah, obviously like, you guys don't know our limits as much as we do, so we understand if you have things to comment on, but just know that there's no guarantee that we can fix what you want fixed. That's just something to keep in mind. Yeah, definitely feel free to ask. It's just note that
there's no harm in asking.
Yeah That's just rude to ask someone to redo something like that. Wow. Yeah. It is what it is.
What are you gonna do? Such is life. C'est la vie. Okay, so lastly, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and we thought we'd include this cute picture at the end to convey that point. I hope you guys think it's cute. I thought it was cute, so I included it. All right, thank you. Thank you guys for coming. Let us know if you have any questions. For those of you watching the recording, email us or text on Discord if you have any questions.
Yeah, definitely ask
And-
questions because I feel like we do sort of ramble on certain things and it might not be as
Yeah.
clear as you'd like. So if you need clarifications, because we gave a lot of examples instead of just listing what you need to know. So
Yeah.
clarifications can always be given. That's what the Discord is for. Yeah.
And no question is a stupid question. Always
Mhm.
remember that. Never refrain from asking a question if you think it's like stupid, because there's no such thing.
I accept
Also,
that.
also for those of you who aren't a part of SBYIR or aren't following us on any of these, make sure to follow us. These are all of our contact information, the website, our email. If you want to email us, the social medias that we have and their respective handles. So yeah, just a little self-plug, if you will. So I will stop sharing, and if anybody has any questions, please, please, please ask. All right.
Do we have a Twitch stream coming up?
That is a question for
Breaking.
Chief Captain Shrey. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye out. Keep an eye out.
Any questions at all? I feel like if more people came, they would have more questions, but it is what it is.
It's
Okay. Oh yeah. Can we also get images from website, like free? Yes, if they're free and if they're like, if they say that like these are free to use, then yeah, those are fair game. If they're like high res. So yeah. So those are some of the websites that we mentioned in the slides. There are also others, like those are just like a few. So yes, in short, yes. Anybody else? Yeah, of course. Huge turnout we have. Grand total of like, I think at one point we had like 5 writers. I'm new. Yeah, it's just you.